Welcome to Horror Hotel, the hotel that houses all of the ghosts and monsters who come out to haunt and horrify hapless humans every Halloween. Tonight is an important night, so we've instructed everyone here to be on their beast behavior.
Horror Hotel started because one year it was late summer and Laura and I were depressed. I'm always depressed, and we were sitting on the porch and I was saying, it's going to be Halloween and we have nothing. And gosh, I missed when we used to do a haunted house. Wasn't that cool when we used to? But we don't have anything lined up for this year. And we got to talking about it, and somehow we're both rather dim. Clearly, it eventually dawned on us that, oh wait, we sort of live in a haunted house, don't we? We live in a great big old house full of horror props and masks and monsters and weird collectibles. And well, what if we open it up to the public and do tours? And at that time we thought, well, it'll just be kind of simple. We'll just, get a few mannequins and put costumes on them and see if people like it. And like everything I do, it starts out simple, but then it goes crazy. Yeah, so the first year, everything was pretty much made out of, pencil shavings and beef jerky and paper wads, because I was like, well, I don't want to spend any money on this because people might not come. This is just something fun doing for Halloween. And tons of people came and loved it and wanted to come back. And so then we're like, after Halloween, we're thinking, oh my gosh, that was fantastic. We'll do it again next year, only now we know it's safe to spend money and go ahead and... Because the first year everything was made out of cardboard boxes, and you keep the lighting low and they don't notice too much. So it basically got a lot better after the first year in terms of production value, didn't it?
Yeah,
Started
it sure did.
Buying more professional lighting and sound equipment and stuff.
Extension cords.
Lots of extension cords, rolls of duct tape.
Gaffer's tape.
Gaffer's tape, lots of gaffer's tape. Lots of safety pins.
Oh, here, hold this.
Plenty of safety pins.
My water dish.
The worst thing about doing Horror Hotel, I think, is taking it down. I think people come through and they think, well, they live like this anyway. I'm sure this was easy for them. And they have no idea how insane the lengths are that we go to in order to run little hidden extension cords behind things and wire everything up in a safe way, and the lighting and the sound effects and you know, even putting a mannequin in costume. I once spent pretty much an entire day dressing up a mannequin as Leatherface. And that sounds like it would take 5 minutes, right? You throw some old clothes on him and put the mask on and you've got it. Well, I tried that and it didn't look right because his body shape wasn't right. So I had to pad the shoulders out, and well then when I padded the shoulders out, then he looked too small through here, so I had to pad that out. Well, then his hips looked too small, so I had to start the legs again, and you know, you can spend hours, and finally I thought that looked great, because ultimately, yes, that looked like Leatherface standing there. It didn't look like a store mannequin. But it takes forever, and I think people look at it and think, oh, cool, they put a mask on a mannequin. That's nice. Don't know how crazy you have to go sometimes. And when the costumes don't fit, Laura will sit there and sew them a certain way, and some of them have safety pins hidden here and there holding them, making the fabric drape a certain way just so it looks like they're naturalistically posed and like they could move. They're not moving, but the idea is to get them to look like they might move. One thing we did was every year we'd have a different life-size figure, a full standing, freestanding monster in the gift shop with whom you could have your picture taken. So the first year I think it was have your picture taken with Frankenstein. One year it was have your picture taken with Boba Fett. It was always a different. And a lot of people around here have told us now that they have like a collection of pictures of their kid growing up every Halloween a year older next to a different monster every year. And that's just so cool. It's a shame to put an end to that. We did Horror Hotel 16 years because we are older than dirt. It's true. And Laura feels like we're too old and feeble and decrepit and broken down to go on doing it. I feel fine, but then, you know, I have days, I mean, you do get older, and I have days like today. People can't tell this on your program, I don't think, but it's 148 degrees, and I'm kind of exhausted today because of the heat, and thinking, yeah, maybe it's not as easy as it was 20 years ago to do this. I really want to bring it back because everywhere I go, everybody knows me, and everybody says, oh, are you doing that Halloween thing? I used to bring my kids every year. And as for me, you probably know my birthday's Halloween, and so was my mother's. And I'm an only child, and Mom was an only child, and it was just kind of destined to happen. It was always, my mom, to this day, my mom sends me cards on every occasion, and she always signs them, "Love the Old Witch," because that's kind of our running joke, is that, you know, Mom's a witch and I'm whatever I am. We haven't really determined that yet for certain, but it was always a fun time of year, I think, because, you know, when I was a little kid, birthday's Halloween. So when you get like a birthday presents and parties and cake and ice cream is when there are black and orange balloons and skulls and paper skeletons and witches and all that cool stuff. So it probably started some fun association with that right away. Oh, and I had a wonderful great aunt who was actually my mother's aunt, but I always called her Aunt Ruth. She would make me a birthday cake every year, and it always had something creepy. Like one year it had a little witch on top, and one year it had a bat, and it was always, you know, So I remember that from back then. And by the way, at Horror Hotel, my mother, we should have had Mom come out here.
Should have Mom come out, yeah.
Mom has been the old witch of Horror Hotel every year. She's the ticket taker, basically. Out
Sits right outside.
in the booth, outside,
In the
when
cold.
you pay your admission to come in.
Makes her do it.
Every year, it's been Mom in her witch outfit. And every year I buy her a new witch hat with a different, design or a different theme to it or something, but every year Mom would have a different witch hat. But so all the kids knew that was the same witch every year, and well, it was just a nice thing. That was a cool thing. And she loves it. Mom would come in every night after these hundreds of people, and I said, well, how'd it go tonight, Mom? And Mom said, oh, it was nice. I met these nice people that drove all the way from Rhode Island, and these other nice people that drove all the way from Pennsylvania, and she just loved doing it every night. And I don't think we could do better than Mom as a ticket taker.
No. Shouldn't charge anything.
And how's the old witch doing this evening?
Fairly well.
Fairly well. Well, sometimes that's the best you can.
She's beautiful.
Best you can do. And how's the young witch?
Beautiful.
Oh, okay.
We are both beautiful.
We'll let the audience
More
decide
or
that.
less.
No, she didn't charge any. She just, no, I want to do it. She loved to be here. She was always on time. She always counts the money correctly.
Can't beat
Mom's
that.
like a superhero.
There you go.
She worked at the school cafeteria for literally 30 years. And she's, an expert with like making change is nothing to her. That just comes second nature. And she will sit out there and tell the little kids weird things about being a witch, just to be amusing.
What was the other one?
You need a cue card to bark?
I always liked werewolf movies, and well, it's kind of a my aunt Sue, right?
Aunt Sue.
She used to scare us when we were kids, and so I was like, I always wanted to find out what scared her, and I found out she didn't like the werewolf. So it happened to be my mom had this red-headed wig, and it got stuffed in a toy box, and it looked like a giant spiked coconut, right? So I figured, hey, what the hell? I'll cut it up and fit it on my face. Well, the first time I did, I used Elmer's glue, and actually it took the eyebrows right off. Yeah, it was
Because who wouldn't?
Yeah. So, and then I've tried everything from that to all kinds of stuff, and after over the years, I mean, even the kids in high school ran around like this, and then when I was in the Navy, I used to run around like this. So it's been part of me ever since I was about 13.
Well, you got drummed out of the service, wasn't it?
No, just a little horn. So that's pretty much it.
Well, the appalling, fascinating thing about Wolfie. Wolfie and I go way back, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
It's very implausible, and it's going to sound like I'm making it up, but the fact is, he used to work at my haunted house that we were both in high school. Now, obviously, we were teenagers. I wasn't a high school teacher.
No, I wouldn't have hung out with you.
We went to two different high schools, so I didn't know this kid, but there was a kid who would come in Wolfman makeup, and he would just show up already in makeup and say, hey, could you use a werewolf at the haunted house tonight? And I would go, yeah, the more monsters the better at the haunted house. And it was nice for me because then it was a kid that I didn't have to give one of my masks to put on. So less wear and tear on a mask right there. So yeah, and sometimes he would call me in the afternoon, hey, is the haunted house going to be open tonight? Would you like to have me come and do Wolfie? And I'd be like, yeah, sure, come on. So he showed up in makeup. He went home in makeup. Nobody ever saw him looking like anything but Wolfie. Nobody ever called him anything but Wolfie. We're just like, oh, yeah, ask Wolfie over there, or tell Wolfie to blah, blah, blah. And we just never, that was it. He was just Wolfie. And since we didn't go to the same school even, we didn't have any other way of knowing each other.
Because it was easy, because I was told by my art teacher that they were doing that and they were looking for volunteers. So I was like, okay, so me and my friends would get dressed up and then we'd walk the 5 miles into town. And then it was easier just to stay in the makeup. So I just stayed in town all night long. So, well, not all night long. I had to go home sometime.
And he hasn't taken it off since 1978.
78.
But a million years later, we get out of school. He moved to
Jackson. I was in Jacksonville, Florida. I was a Navy dog.
How long were you down there?
I was down there 10 years.
10 years.
10 years.
And Laura and I were in California.
For how many years?
7 years.
Oh, I thought it was 10 also.
No, we were only there 7 years. I broke a mirror. And then, so 100,000 years later, the same guy is still Wolfie on the late Dr. Lady show, who was Wolfie at my haunted house when we were still alive.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I have always been a horror fan since I was a kid. Our parents took us to drive-ins. Sometimes it was scary. And we always stayed up late and watched Chiller Theater as a family. They weren't real gruesome movies then, but they were scary. We liked it. And then once I got hooked up with David, when he started making masks, he was doing the sculpting and the pouring and everything, but not so keen on doing hair for them, so that was me then. Okay, facial hair is probably the toughest because you have to lay it on in very thin layers, and you have to get enough hair on there but not get glue, at least not visibly, and then cut it very, very short. And often it requires tearing it off and doing it again if you don't get it looking right. Beard hair is similar to like Vincent's facial hair, except that of course you can put it on a little thicker, depending on what kind of beard. This fellow actually has a very thin beard, and you can see his face and the bulges underneath right through it. But I usually put the glue on the hair itself and then put it on the face, put the hair onto the face, because if you put the glue on the face, you're going to have big glue lines. A lot of times you'll be copying what you've seen in a movie. If they used cheap plastic hair, then even if it didn't look good, you used cheap plastic hair. And some of these have human hair because it looked like human hair in the movie, and a lot of them have crepe hair because crepe hair behaves. You can gel it, you can curl it, you can do a lot of things that you can't do to all of the human hair, because the human hair is usually Indian or Oriental, which doesn't curl very well. In a mask, you think of what kind of animal it's like, and then do something like that animal. I know that where dogs' hairs go, so I guess I don't actually have a dog sitting for me while I'm doing it, but I've noticed. If someone's going to have hair that lays down and it's going to be short, then of course you can just glue it on and you just get it thinner and thinner as you come to the edge. Tricky not getting glue to show though. That's probably the hardest type of hair to do, because you have to put it in very, very thin layers and then trim it and then tear it all off and do it again because it didn't look right the first time. This mask is Shina Sase, and it might be the only one that exists, done by Harry Inman. That was a job because she's got hair on her shoulders, which to get the curl and the texture, I needed to blend crepe hair and human hair, but it is all glued on. And the quills required actual drilling out the quill holes with a Dremel tool and then gluing in the quills. The quills are actual quills, dyed and the tips painted and then inserted. And the back of her head has medical tubing rather than quills. I think she turned out all right. Okay, this of course is Pinhead, the Cenobite, and he doesn't have hair, but he was a chance to recreate those nails in his head. I know a lot of the masks are sold with sort of a toothpick sticking out, more like a needle head, but I think this is the way they actually did it in the movie. I used plastic Q-tips and cut them off the right length, and then took a paper punch and through some thin plastic, punched out holes and super glued them to the ends, the tips of the Q-tips, and then sprayed them silver. And some of the places where it's jointed there, that also required a Dremel to kind of make a little bed for it. And then they were glued in first with contact cement, and then after they fell out, with super glue. It probably took me a week. He's looking a little disheveled, but this would be an example of a mask that is mass-produced, and very nicely, actually. This is from Don Post Studios, and this is as it comes, the paint and the hair. And then this is a mask. It's the same mask, but this one was painted by David, and I haired it with human hair. And when you're doing your own, and you don't mind taking a long time doing it, you can make it look a lot more movie accurate. As you can see, they've got the nice fluffy crepe hair, which is very nice to work with, and this is human hair, which is a devil to work with. The mummy's the only one I can think of where after you're through applying all the hair, you actually have to cover the hair then with paint, like the mask was covered with.
Could you discuss any of the difficulties with, for example, mask hair and applications to masks or costumes?
No. As far as when masks first started being produced, I think it's generally agreed that the late 30s, 1938, 1939, in there when Don Post Studios was founded, that was kind of the thing that kicked it off. And their first masks at that time weren't any luxe, and nobody thought of them as collectibles or collector's items, or they were just cheap little disposable fun novelties for Halloween. First ones were actually not even monsters, they were called the dictators, and they did masks of Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini, Tojo, Larry Curly Moe. No, but they were the dictators, and they would have been much thinner latex with just quickly painted on details and molded painted on hair. It was quite a bit later that anybody started thinking of making really deluxe. It wasn't until sometime in the 60s when an artist named Vern Langdon, who worked at Don Post, steered the course of masks forevermore towards monsters as characters rather than just celebrities or generic faces like an old man or an old lady. Vern Langdon sort of started the monster thing and encouraged Don Post to make masks of famous movie monsters. And back then, of course, there wasn't any such thing as the interwebs. So those of us who were interested in masks and monsters and such back then wouldn't have had all this easy stuff like these young whippersnappers today have. Damn it! Today they have eBay and all that sort of thing. But in the 1960s and 70s, and even well into the 80s, really, the only game in town was printed page, was actual three-dimensional matter you could hold in your hand, such as Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine and other magazines like that might have had a section where they sold Don Post masks in the back. And other than that, there weren't that many outlets for them. There were amusement parks, like the Disney theme parks, would have magic shops that sold lots of great Don Post masks. That would always be a fun thing. And of course, at Halloween, costume shops and novelty shops and magic shops would get their new supply of Don Post masks, and that'd be a fun thing. But they weren't nearly so common, and it was forever before anybody thought of them as anything like collectibles. They were just a silly, fun, novelty product to buy for Halloween. I don't think they really became collectibles until even sometime after the big historic monster calendar of 1966, which was a thing that got a lot of people started as far as having an interest in masks. The 1966 monster calendar had a different picture of a mask, a Don Post movie monster mask for each month. And I didn't actually become aware of it as a calendar. I wasn't quite that old by the time I became aware of it. People were selling them as sets of monster pictures, and they would cut off the calendar part, and you were basically buying a set of 12 monster pictures. And you know, Frankenstein, Wolfman, Dracula, Mummy, Creature, Mole People, all the. And I thought those were really cool, but I didn't know that they originally came from a calendar. The most popular masks, the ones that are the best sellers that everybody loves, tend to be the ones based on the biggest movies. It's true. And one exception to that would be the Don Post Tor Johnson. Tor being a big 400-pound Swedish wrestler who appeared in a lot of cheap movies in the 50s and was sort of a classic, iconic image of low-budget, kind of sleazy horror. Tor was in movies like Plan 9 from Outer Space and Beast of Yucca Flats and Bride of the Monster. Classics all. And the Tor Johnson mask was just such a great image. This bald, fat face with rolled up, dead-looking eyes and a big cut on the forehead. It was a mask that looked fun and creepy, but funny, and just fun anywhere, anytime. And millions of them were sold over the years. It's actually one of the most popular masks of all time, despite not being one of the biggest characters. The others would be characters like Frankenstein, Michael Myers, Darth Vader, Freddy Krueger. Characters that everybody knows. I've been asked whether some latex masks were ever recalled. Actually, I recall quite a few of them because I've been collecting and making and buying and selling this stuff for centuries. So I recall a great many of them. I don't think there's ever been like a safety recall or anything. There were stories in the late 70s, but it was just sort of a rumor, sort of what we might today call an urban legend, I guess, that the Don Post glow-in-the-dark masks that were made of glow-in-the-dark vinyl rather than black vinyl that had then been sponged over with glow-in-the-dark paint were toxic to wear. But I'm pretty sure that turned out not to be the case. I think it was sort of an old wives' tale. And perhaps your old wives will confirm it. But I'm pretty sure nobody ever really died from wearing a glow-in-the-dark mask. It was new, and people, I don't want that on my kid's head. It could have strange radioactive chemicals from Krypton in it, and people sort of overreacted. It's like the razor blades in the apple thing. It never really happens, but everybody kind of thought it did, and the glow-in-the-dark masks got a bad rap for a short time because of that. But I don't think there's ever been a real safety problem other than cases where maybe the studio forgot to cut out eye holes and some idiot put it on anyway and wondered, gee, why can't I see? And then the bus hit him. You wouldn't think I know 11 of those people, but what was the question? Latex was the preferred medium, I think, clearly, because when you made them out of cheese, it attracted rats, mice, and other rodents. And let's be honest, nobody wants that. I think you can see somewhat of a shift in popular designs and sculptural techniques and stuff over the years, kind of like you can see in the movie industry, a certain type of film was popular in maybe the 70s or the 80s, and it's something a little different today. But overall, the processes involved are pretty much the same as they were back in the early Don Post days. The processes are still pretty much the same as far as how these things come from somebody's brain into three-dimensional reality as a mask. They all start out as a clay sculpture of which a mold is made, and that mold is basically a negative impression of the sculpture, much like the negative impression I'm making right now on you, the viewer. The mold is filled with liquid latex, and when that dries, a mask comes out. That's pretty much the same, although every artist has his or her own favorite specific methodology, I guess. One thing that's always fun is to check, when you have time anyway, for me, I try to check what's on television in the month of October, because a lot of shows have Halloween episodes, and it's always fun to see, oh, there's going to be a Halloween party on such and such sitcom tonight. I try to watch those because they'll have extras milling around in the party scenes wearing masks, and sometimes it's something that was created by somebody I know. And it's happened with a few of mine a few times, that they used one of my masks on an episode of Frasier that had a sci-fi convention. They used one on a Halloween episode of Life Goes On. Things like that. So it's always fun to watch those Halloween episodes and see, oh, I got to call my buddy and tell him, hey, that mask you made was on TV tonight. And then it's something we all have to look for when we get one of those notifications from a friend that, oh, what season, what episode? Yeah, I need to see that. And, that's how that works. I think a big influence with me was probably the cantina sequence in the original Star Wars in 1977. Even though kind of similar things like Star Trek and Lost in Space and older shows where there were different aliens together, nobody created an environment quite like that cantina scene with all those different creatures in there. I think that really left a mark on my brain and that of a lot of other people who were already maybe sci-fi and horror fans, but that really made you interested in masks and character design and stuff that was a little more exclusive before that. Just seeing so many strange creatures in one place. When you're a kid, you want to go there, to that cantina. Even if it is a wretched hive of scum and villainy, you're willing to risk it because you want to meet all those cool, strange-looking aliens. And I think we're still seeing fallout from that. All those silly mask segments that I do that I'm happy to say are apparently very well received by a lot of the humans on the planet. Those started with first Creepy Cheapies, and I didn't even have a name for it, and I thought of that kind of after the fact, and then we thought, well, that's a cute thing. That's good enough. I just wanted to do some segments about affordable masks to let people know that not everything has to cost $400 to be cool. There are a lot of great masks that are 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 bucks that anybody can afford that are really nice and collectible. And I wanted to bring some of those to the attention of fellow collectors. And I got to thinking about it because Eric Austin, who runs the HMA.net, was honestly looking for content for their website and came to me and said, can you think of, he was having people write blogs, and he said, can you write a blog of some sort? And I'm thinking, what can you write every week that has to do with masks and make it something that people will want to read and talk about every week? And I don't know. And then I thought, well, what if it was a video blog? And I actually hold the mask up to the camera and show it to people, and instead of just reading my words, you get to see this thing and the color and the design and what it really looks like, and I could just tell you about it. Noteworthy limited edition versions of They Live characters years ago, in the old days. But this one from 2013, highly recommended, and one of the best masks, best mass-produced masks of 2013, I would say, easily. So that's all from us. Join me again next week for another Creepy Cheapies. Thanks for watching. It was well received, and I started putting them on YouTube and so forth, but it started just with the intention of being something for the HMA.net. And then, in addition to the Creepy Cheapies, I started doing the Mask Fan Attic a little later. Those segments are devoted to ones that are no longer in production. The Creepy Cheapies are, I'm kind of saying, here's a tip for you if you're looking for a nice mask for Halloween that you can afford. Look for one of these. I love this one. Here's the name of it, blah, blah, blah. The Attic is more for the collectors, where I tell them, here's an interesting thing that came out in whatever year, here's what it was based on, here's why it's noteworthy. So they're more like Antique Dead Person Roadshow or something, I guess. You can imagine the mask itself weighs a ton. The mold must weigh as much as a mid-sized automobile, and it must be the size of a mid-sized automobile, come to think of it, and extremely difficult to fill it with latex and pour it and cast it and make castings of this thing. I also authored a couple of books on the subject, Dr. Lady's Collector's Guide to Movie and TV Monster Masks. There are 2 printings, but the second one is just an updating. It's nearly twice as big as the first one, but it contains all the same material as the first one, plus a bunch of additional material. I kind of felt like, because people all over would call me or write me letters in the mail or try to look me up somehow to ask me questions about old monster masks, I thought, you know, if I get hit by a bus tonight and die, nobody else seems to have this all cataloged in one place where future generations of mutants can find it and know one mask from another and who made them and what they look like and so forth. And I thought I should really put this into a book, and I'd already been saving photos. I must have like 20 photo albums of mask photos and Halloween photos and stuff. And I started thinking I should do something with this quick before I die. So I put together a sort of guidebook with every mask, and the nicest compliment, it was very well received really, and I was real happy about it, but the nicest compliment I ever got was that Don Post himself said he always carried it in his briefcase when he went anywhere, because he didn't remember all that stuff about, and when someone would ask him at a trade show or a convention or something, he could whip out my book and look it up and say, oh yeah, we made one of those in 1968, you know. So that was a high compliment to me that Don Post carried it in his briefcase. That was just awesome. And yeah, I still say awesome at this age. 11 o'clock, sir. Checkout time. Now, I got the bill for your room right here. Looks like you were with us 3 nights. Had 2 calls to tomb service, 3 long-distance phone calls charged to your room. That's 1 using the in-room telephone and 2 using the in-room Ouija board to call friends who were a little farther off. You had 2 breakfasts at the hotel dining room. That's all on here, plus your tax. And, again,